So before we get into this episode, I have a little bit of bad news for you, and I hate to start it off on a bad note. But I tested this episode, uploading it. This is the fourth time this podcast is uploaded on the back end. So I started recording this podcast on Saturday, this past Saturday, on the 7th. And I worked on it. You know, I recorded half of it Saturday, did some recording on Monday, did some recording yesterday, and I thought it was good. And I uploaded it several times, did some editing, changed some stuff around, and I was really excited about it, right? And then I woke up this morning, and I work nights, so 6 a.m. is not my I don't get up early, so, but I got up like at 9 something, and I saw it wasn't up, and I was like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, I have a fucking copyright strike, and I was waiting for that white screen to go up when I logged in, and that didn't happen, so I looked in the back end, and it said it was blocked, and I was like, what the fuck? I uploaded it 3 times, and it wasn't a problem. So I guess there's a difference between uploading a podcast like this with music, copyrighted music. There's a difference between it having it unlisted and public. So as soon as it went live, it was taken down. So I don't know if anybody out there saw it. But I guess what I'm going to do is, I don't know, I can't really decide. I'm going to try to do 30 seconds of the song, or maybe take all the songs out. I may post. I mean, I don't really understand how I can post all of them individually. Some of these probably will be blocked. Like there's a couple of songs that might be blocked, but I don't understand how I can post songs individually, but I can't post them all together in one video. I guess it has to do with they don't want to put all the ads between the song, or to like if there's several songs in one video, they can't put ads in between them. They would rather put it in one if it was one song, if that makes sense. I don't know. There's stupid rules out there, but there is a Spotify playlist that has all of these songs except one. And then there is a YouTube playlist, I'll put it in the pinned comment. You can go check out the full songs. And this is probably, this podcast is probably not going to happen, because I wanted it a certain way, and there's only going to be one episode. But I think that what I will do is I'll bring back the other podcast and just have it on Thursdays, and then so it'll be a Throwback Thursday, New Music Friday. So I'll talk about the new stuff from the previous week, and then I'll throw it back with some, because in this episode I kind of talked about like big songs that was number one this week, like the Merle song "I'll Just Stay Here and Drink" was number one in 1981 of this week. There were certain things that happened on this day, but like in the past, like certain people were born this week, certain people died. So, but yeah, this is kind of a one-hit wonder type deal. So I hope you guys enjoy, but I'll bring it back in some shape or form in the other podcast. And in the other podcast, I'm going to do video. This is not a good YouTube, unless you like audio only. I mean, but I'm going to try to do video next time on the other podcast and bring that back. And yeah, man, here is the podcast. Go check out the other music. I'm so disappointed, really, but it doesn't. I had it all worked out. It was all good. I had it all like. I had timestamps, so you can hit the... I don't know. Anyway, here is the podcast. Hope everybody has a nice Thursday. Be sure to check out... This is a reminder. Be sure to check out the playlist before its race tonight. for New Music Friday tomorrow. So here's the podcast, and hope you enjoy. Check it out. Alrighty then, what is going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of the Throwback Thursday podcast right here on OkiePatriot76 Radio. Hope everybody out there is having a nice Thursday. And this little podcast idea is something I kind of cooked up this past week, and I'm actually recording this on January 7th, a little bit early. So I'm going to, hopefully, if you're hearing this, the music on this podcast doesn't get blocked. So hopefully that's not the case. So about a month ago, I started this segment, or maybe a couple months ago, I started this segment of a Throwback Thursday where I posted classic country songs, and I started listening to this station here locally here in Oklahoma, or actually it's in Texas, and they started playing. They play exclusively like 50s through early 2000s country. Anywhere from Bob Wills to Brooks and Dunn, basically. And I started getting into classic, like, old country. And for the first time. Like, I always listened to that, but I just never really listened to it, like, all the time. And here lately, I've been, in the past few months, 6 months or so, it's been something I've really been getting into. And so, because of that, I just wanted to share some like deep cuts from these legendary artists that you probably have never heard of. And so this is what this podcast is. And so to introduce the new year, and I don't know, I just think that it's a cool little idea, and maybe you may not like it, or maybe I just want to try something different and experiment a little bit. And so this is all this is. And so to start it off, here is one of my favorites that I found on that station. Classic Country Legends out of, I don't know where it is in Texas, but you can find it. It's called Classic Country Legends out of the Panhandle of Texas. So here is Boogie Grass Band by Conway Twitty. Such a good song. So freaking good. Here it is. Check it out.
There's a new kind of music going round. It's known as the boogie grass sound. So grab your partner and swing her around and dance to the boogie grass sound. I love to hear Bill sing about Kentucky and the almond.
You know, I recently just got into Conway Twitty. I know that sounds weird, but I've always heard of Conway Twitty. I've always, knew Hello Darlin'. That's the song that I, kind of knew him. But I recently went down this rabbit hole of finding out that he lived in Oklahoma City for, I don't know, 15 years or 10 years or something like that. And he had like a burger chain at one point. It was like a pineapple, it was like a pineapple burger, like a Hawaiian burger. It was like the Conway Twitty burger or whatever it was. I don't know the name, but you can look into that. But it's really interesting. I did not realize that. And he moved to Oklahoma City in the late 60s, I believe. And that's where he transitioned from rockabilly. Like there's a song out there that I uploaded, I think, a couple months ago called Long Black Train. I think that's the name of it. Yeah, and he wrote that, and it sounds exactly like it's like an Elvis. It's like Elvis 2.0. Like it's so. I've never heard that song. Maybe that's your favorite song of all time, but I mean, I've never heard that song. I mean, it's a great rockabilly tune. It's a really good. I love I recently got into that Sun Records show on. I think it's on Paramount Plus now, but I recently watched it, and it's so freaking good. And but he moved to Oklahoma City, and that's where he transitioned from rockabilly to country. And it's very interesting. But I love that song, Boogie Grass Band. It's such a good song. And I just was looking at some kind of fun facts with that song. That song was produced by Owen Bradley. And he was a legendary producer in Nashville in the 50s and 60s. And it says here, this is very weird, by the way. He says here he died January 7th, 1998, in Nashville, which I'm recording this on January 7th, which that's very weird. I just found that out. Very strange. But I love Conway Twitty. I love I don't know. I just love the Oklahoma connection, and you'll figure this out the more you listen to the podcast or this podcast or the other one that I want to do this year. Get more episodes out there. I love finding out people that are from Oklahoma, and I don't know. I don't know. It's just something, a weird fascination for me. So let's take a look at January 12th. This day in music, January 12th. Speaking of Oklahoma, there's a guy named Jimmy Webb who is from Western Oklahoma. And he wrote Highwaymen, one of his biggest songs of all time, which was recently covered by a friend of the podcast, Cody Tyler, and some friends. If you haven't checked out Cody Tyler, he's absolutely incredible. One of my favorite albums of 2022. But Jimmy Webb also wrote a very popular song for Glenn Campbell, Wichita Lineman. Has an Oklahoma connection to it. Back in 1969, it was a #1 record for Glenn Campbell. Webb penned the song when he was driving through Wichita County in rural southwestern Oklahoma. Heading westward on a straight road into the setting sun, he drove past a line of telephone poles, each looking exactly the same as the last. Then in the distance, he noticed a silhouette of a lineman atop a pole, and that's how he wrote that song. So I knew he was from Oklahoma. I did not. I had to do some research and found that little bit of information. So it's very interesting. Now everybody has heard the Glenn Campbell version. I want to mix it up a little bit and play the White Yoakum version.
I'm a lineman for the county, then I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the wine, and the Wichita lineman.
Gotta love Dwight Yoakam, puts his own little spin on it. I recently got into a show, I can't remember the name of it. It's been like several months since I watched it. It's with Billy Bob Thornton. It's on Amazon. Damn it. I totally lost the name. But Dwight Yoakam plays this, the CEO of this company. And I think I talked about it on the other podcast. But, anyway, go check out Billy Bob Thornton. It's on Amazon. It's probably the only show with Billy Bob Thornton on there on Amazon Prime or whatever. It's really fucking good. It's really good. Dwight Yoakam is so good in there. And so yeah, it's a little. I always love that Sling Blade movie. Pretty good show. kind of a little throwback, and he was on there for like one season, so it was pretty cool. So really good show, by the way. Check it out. But speaking of crime, this past week was the 2nd anniversary. It's hard to believe, the worst day in the history of the world, and January 6th, everybody's going crazy over it. I don't really care. I mean, it's just, I feel bad for the people in who got wrongfully convicted. And that's one of the things you're going to see. I'm very vocal on social media about my political views. And, I mean, I just can't help it. And I'm going to be vocal on this podcast or on this channel in general, because it's who I am. It's just who, and there's not a lot of country music outlets out there that are very unapologetically a conservative, or they are Trump's, or they are very vocally right, I guess. And I mean, there's some people out there, but it's almost like these outlets, these country music outlets, are like afraid to pick a side. And like, I don't care. Like, I listen to Jason Isbell, I listen to Jason Aldean. Like, it's music. Like, I don't want to like pick a side with music, but whenever it comes with politics, I kind of want to give a platform to people out there that are not going to be on the radio. Obviously, you're going to hear Jason Aldean on the radio. Unfortunately, I don't really like his music, to be honest with you, but I respect the hell out of him for coming out and saying the stuff he said this past year and all that kind of good stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't really care where these artists stand politically. I just want them to produce good music. And Jason Aldean is not doing that, but I'll give him a pass because he's being a patriot and stuff, right? I'll just give him a pass. But that's one of my goals for 2023 is to put more artists out there. There's so many great artists out there that are very vocal about their political views, and but when we're talking about classic country, you can't go wrong with the OG Charlie Daniels. And I cried for like weeks. It broke me when I heard he died. What was it, 3 years ago, or like 2.5 years ago, whatever it was? Horrible loss to country music. But since it's January 6th, this past week, I found this song that he did, like, I don't know, back in the 90s, early 2000s maybe, Land of Opportunity. Let me just make sure if I got the years right on here. Just want to make sure. Because, let me just see the album on this. He did it in 1974. I was totally off. My bad. Whoops. But this is kind of goes to show you that the world has not changed. Like, the justice system has not changed in 50 years. It's still, these politicians are going to get off, like Nancy Pelosi's husband and all that, all those people, all the elites of the world. Like, he can do no wrong. He can get out. Like, he's got a get out of jail free card. He's not going to go to jail, right? But when it comes to these, people who they don't like, or who don't have, money or whatever, they're going to go to jail. And it has nothing to do with skin color or whatever. It has to do with they don't like you. You're not a part of them. They sent a grandmother, what was her name, from Iowa or somewhere. This was the craziest story last year. They sent her to prison, I think in California. I think she was from Idaho, but they sent her off to prison in California somewhere. She had cancer for participating in J6. So listen to the song. It really kind of relates to, it kind of paints the picture of those political prisoners. Horrible situation. And if Charlie Daniels was alive during that, I feel like he would go off on Twitter.
We hold his truth to be self-evident. You're guilty till you're proof of innocence. Oh, the land of opportunity. If you got money, you can buy immunity.
Rest in Peace, Charlie Daniels. Such a good song, and I just recently heard that for the first time a few months ago. So I think it fits real well with today and age. People listen to songs like I just watched a YouTube video of a guy. He was a black guy, and he was relating that song to the craziness that happened in the past couple years. You can kind of, do the math on that. But let's switch gears here and go to the next song. We're going to throw it way back to the 40s. And, 40s country is not like, really exciting. I feel like, it's very, 50s country is very boring to me, even though, it still has one of the greatest, when you think of classic country, Hank Williams. I recently just started digging and finding like 40s country, and whenever you think of classic country, whenever people think of country music, they may think of this song. It's pretty popular on TV shows, and one of the phrases in the song is like a very popular phrase whenever you think of like old school country. I owe my soul to the company store. And of course I'm talking about the song 16 Tons, which was written by Merle Travis in the 40s. Little fun fact about Merle. He is from Kentucky, but he moved to Oklahoma, and that's where he lived. I think the latter part of his life, or later in life, he died in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And but that song was made popular by Tennessee Ernie Ford, I believe. That was the first recording of it, and that was his big hit. But you can find and it's a very popular song. Like, I was looking at different versions of it, and you have people from other genres record it. Like Stevie Wonder recorded it. Like there's lots of like folk people from the 70s, like the singer from the Animals, Eric Burdon, recorded it. But it's a very, very well known classic country sound. Like I mean, you go on Spotify and type in 16 Tons. There's lots of different versions of it. I even found a version from ZZ Top, which was really good. And there's also a version from, I didn't even know the guy was a singer, but he's really good. The guy from Bonanza, Ben Cartwright or whatever his name is. He was I mean, it kind of makes sense now. I mean, he has a very deep voice. He's kind of like a Mike Rowe type. Have you ever heard of Mike sing? Very good, but he covered that song, and I would recommend go check out that song. But what I'm gonna switch it up a little bit and throw in Oklahoma's own Leon Russell. Leon Russell, pretty well known in Oklahoma, legendary artist in like the Tulsa sound world. A few months back, the Dropkick Murphys did that album at the church studio. They recorded that in Tulsa with Evan Felker of the Turnpike Troubadours. It's a really good song, but Dropkick Murphys is like a Celtic, like, folk band or whatever. Like, it's not country, but it's very, very different. But the church studio, I believe, was started by it's Leon Russell's studio, founded by him. So, but in the 70s, according to the story, Leon Russell got so big doing like rock at the time, pop or whatever it was, that he wanted to go back to his roots, and he kind of did like what Garth Brooks did, which it didn't really work out for Garth. And I don't know about Leon either, but like the Chris Gaines thing with Garth, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. But anyway, that's another story from another day. Garth is very weird, but Leon Russell had a country like character that he did, Hank Wilson, and he covered, classic country songs. And so here's Hank Wilson's Leon Russell's version.
That's strong, you load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Well, I was born one morning when the sun didn't shine. I picked up my shovel and I walked to the mine. 16 tons of number 9 coal. Straw boss said, well, bless my soul, load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Right by an old mama line. No hat on a woman, maybe walk the line. You know 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Well, if you see me coming, better step aside. A lot of men didn't and a lot of men died. One fist of fire and the other of steel. If the right one don't get you, then the left one will. 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Speaking of legendary songs from the 40s, I can't not talk about on the horrible anniversary of the passing of Hank Williams about a week ago. One of Hank Williams' biggest songs, or a very popular song. I mean, he has a lot of great songs, but My Bucket's Got a Hole in It. Very interesting story. So reading the history about it, you can go on Wikipedia and look at it. But like, it's very interesting to hear or read the how that song had almost didn't release because it was very controversial at the time, talking about beer, and it's almost comical. Like, oh, it was the 40s, and it was very controversial to talk about alcohol, and it was a very different time then. But it was released, and there was a line in the song about Ford, how he was driving a Ford or something. I can't remember the exact line, but they removed that from the song. Because they were afraid that radio stations sponsored by GM or Chrysler or whoever wouldn't play it because it mentioned Ford. And I wonder how much of that goes on now. That's why, certain songs don't get played, or I've even heard of like songwriters rewriting their own songs to sell to a big artist because that artist has a deal with Chevy, but they wrote a song about Ford, so they wrote the same. They kind of changed the song to fit their deal, and I just thought, I mean, that still goes on now, but I wonder. I mean, there's obviously corruption in like the radio world. I feel like, or there's a monopoly of like certain people don't get played and certain people get played all the time. But it's very interesting. So that but I recently watched that movie. I Saw the Light. I think maybe, I don't know what it was, maybe last year or something. I rented it or something. I got it on YouTube or something, and it was damn good. It was a good movie. It was. I love those movies about that. Just about music in general. Like I just love learning about artists that I don't really know about a lot, because it's from a different time in history, and I don't know. But like I said, I watched that Sun Records show, and doing some research, I was kind of looking up some music from the Sun Records era, and I remember there's this CD out there, like a soundtrack of Sun Records, and it's not on YouTube, it's not on Spotify, anywhere, but there's a Tom Petty cover of Blue Moon of Kentucky, one of my favorite songs. I'm pretty sure Elvis did it, but that was one of his his bigger hit, or his biggest hits, one of his first hits early on. But on that record that I'm talking about, that I can't find, I remember as a kid, but I can't find, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin did a cover of that song that I want to play. Hopefully it doesn't get blocked, because there's a possibility you may never hear this episode. I may just be wasting my time in doing this.
Standing on the corner with my bucket in my hand, I'm just looking for a woman that ain't got no man, 'cause my bucket's got a hole in it. Yeah, my bucket's got a hole in it. Yeah, my bucket's got a hole in it. It won't hold no beer. Well, there ain't no you. I mean, you're working so hard, 'cause I've got a woman and the boss man's got her, 'cause my bucket's got a hole in it. Yeah, my bucket's got a hole in it. Yeah, my bucket's got a hole in it.
So I did find that album, but it's not on Spotify or anywhere. But it's on Amazon. Somebody's selling it on Amazon. You can get it for $50 for one CD. But it's really. I mean, you can probably find individual songs on YouTube, like I just did. But there's like Elton John on there. Kid Rock is on there before he kind of went country. This is like early 2000s, I think. We have Van Morrison, which he's very country if you listen to, his stuff. And I think Van Morrison did a cover of My Bucket's Got a Hole in It. I'm pretty sure I saw that. Bob Dylan is on there, and then Matchbox 20 is on there. You have Sheryl Crow, Eric Clapton. Obviously Tom Petty, like I said earlier. Paul McCartney, it's on there. I mean, legendary artists is on there, but it's unfortunately not on streaming services, but it's on YouTube. Like you can search it, but I would recommend you go find that song by Tom Petty, Blue Moon of Kentucky. It's probably one of my favorite versions of that song. Elvis's version is good. All the other versions is good, but that's one of my favorite songs from that time frame. Also, this week in 1981, the Merle Haggard hit "I Think I'll Just Stay Here and Drink" was the #1 song in the country. Stayed that way for 1 week and spent a total of 12 weeks on the country music charts back in 1981. Now, I follow this page over on Facebook, and I'll put the link to this post in the description below, but it's this is from Classic Country Music Stories over on Facebook. And I'm going to read a little excerpt of what they put. Basically, they pick classic country music songs basically that was big in the past, like I'm doing here, and they tell the history or the story behind it. So this song was big in 1981, but in 1979, a exhausted Merle decided to quit the music business. He went on a houseboat, basically stayed on a houseboat for 6 months, kept his band on the payroll to try to rekindle his kind of energy for the. He was just burnt out, like he was just exhausted. I mean, think about it. He's been like doing it for 15 years on the road. At that point, 10 years at least, and he was just done. And so a rededicated Haggard finally emerged from the houseboat and earned his 25th number one hit with "I Think I'll Just Stay Here and Drink," listed at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The recording featured 2 drummers and 3 lengthy instrumental solos. Merle's label MCA had been pressuring him to do more up-tempo songs, to which he sarcastically replied, "I don't know, we had speedometers on the records." Nevertheless, Haggard obliged them and came up with a fast song. Merle's idea for the song came from a friend's comment. He got ideas for many of his songs that way. This particular time, a friend called Haggard at home one night. Later, Merle commented that he didn't even remember who it was. Merle wanted him to come over and drink, but the guy said, "No thanks, I just wanted to call and say hello. I think I'll just stay here and drink." And he hung up. The guy hung up. So Merle grabbed a pen, wrote that down quickly, and soon delivered a fast song and a up-tempo song like MCA wanted. Reached number one on January 10th, 1981, and Haggard's only official Billboard chart topper during his 4-year association with MCA Records. A new contract with Epic Records marked the beginning of a new string of number one hits. Later that year, in November 28th, 1981, with My Favorite Memory, and ending with Merle's 38 tune Reach with the Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Star in 1988, February 20th, 1988. Now, I could play the Merle version, but you probably have heard that. If you're listening to this show, you probably heard that a million times. You can go check it out if you want, but I think it'd be interesting. Maybe you may not have heard the Warrant version. If you don't know who Warrant is, big 80s rock band. They're famous for the song She's My Cherry Pie. And I did some digging earlier just to find, is there any covers of this song just to liven up the show? And they did a cover back in 2017 for the Professional Bull Riders Association. I did not realize that. And they went to rodeos across the country and performed a rock version of this song. So here is the Warrant version. It's pretty good. Not bad at all. Check it out.
Could be holding you tonight. Could quit doing wrong and start doing right. You don't care about what I think. I think I'll just stay here and drink. Hey, putting you down, no square, no deal. At least you know the way I feel. Take all the money in the bank. I think I'll just stay here and drink. Listen close and you can hear. Oh, Yo, bartender!
I don't know how I feel about that version, but I like it. It's different. It's something different for a change. And if you want to go look up the Merle version, it's the original, so obviously it's fantastic. But speaking of covers, we're going to go from rock and roll to country instead of country to rock and roll. So I'm really excited about this. So I recently watched the Beatles documentary. I think it's on Hulu. And I've been on this, like, finding Beatles country songs kick for, I don't know, a couple years. And a couple years ago, I found this band from the 60s. And at the time, they must have been huge in, like, I don't know, the country music world. You may have never heard of them. But basically, they took Beatles songs in real time and made them into bluegrass country covers. And so you can go check it out. It's the Charles River Valley Boys, and this was released in 1966, I believe, 1967, 1966. And they only put out one album or maybe a couple albums, but it's only one on Spotify. But I'm going to play, and this is, I think this was covered by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, I believe. So it's a pretty country-ish song, and you know there's other country songs that that are from the Beatles. I think they did a cover, or I mean, check out the album. They did a cover, like their whole album is Beatles songs. Obviously, they're like the country Beatles, and I never thought I would hear Yellow Submarine turn into a country song, or Octopus Garden. I'm a huge Beatles fan. I mean, you can think they're crazy or, you know, whatever, but they were deeply influenced by country music. I mean, I can't remember what documentary. I think I was watching a documentary on Buddy Holly or something. But I mean, Buddy Holly was rockabilly, rock and roll at the time, but I think that he would have been country today. But Paul McCartney was deeply influenced by Buddy Holly, and I can't remember what was the Beatle that was like stuck in the hospital. Was it Ringo Starr? Maybe, I think either Ringo or George Harrison was like in the hospital, and he remembers listening to Hank Williams, I believe, or maybe it's the Everly Brothers. It was one of those. Maybe I might be totally off, but I didn't look that up before I went live. But they were deeply influenced by country music. Obviously, the song with Buck Owens that they did. But let's play "What Goes On" by the Charles River Valley Band. Pretty good stuff. And later on in the show, I'll play another Beatles country cover. Check it out.
What goes on in your heart? What goes on in your mind? You are tearing me apart when you treat me so unkind. What goes on in your mind? I met you in the morning as you walked along the road, and when I saw you with him, I could feel my future fold. It's so easy for a girl like you to lie. Tell me why.
So freaking good. That's been one of my weird fascinations of this past year, is finding country songs in popular music that's been released. And I did a playlist over on Spotify this past year of country artists covering popular legendary songs from either the recent past or from 40, 50 years ago. You have just go check out the playlist. But if you don't have Spotify, there's like a Taylor Swift cover that Taylor Swift covered, and then Blackberry Smoke did I totally missed this until like a few months ago. They did a Rolling Stones tribute, and then this year Stone Cold Country is going to be dropping I think in March 2023, there's going to be a whole bunch of legendary country artists from today, like Lainey Wilson, and I can't remember exactly, but it's just type in Stone Cold Country on iTunes, and you look at the pre-sale. I think there's like Co Wetzel's on there as well. There's some Red Dirt artists on there, but it's all like it's all Nashville mainstream artists covering Rolling Stone songs. But I can't wait for it because there's something about, those songs were so great back in the day, like the Beatles and the Stones, and yeah. So just go check it out. The band of Heathens did some covers of like some old songs from back in the day. That I forget. So just go check out that playlist. I just type in country covers OkiePatriot76 on Spotify to find it. But yeah, that's my weird fascination, is finding country songs that are classic from like, I feel like every classic rock band back in the day had a country album, and that was so great about people back then. They didn't just stick to one genre. It was like, Elvis did country, Jerry Lee Lewis did country, the Beatles did some country stuff, like, and the Stones did a country. I mean, there's so many songs that the Stones did that are country, that are, Honky Tonk Woman, like, it's country. And that stuff influenced a lot of the songs that came out of the 90s. And a perfect example of one of those artists is somebody like Travis Tritt, who got a lot of flack in the 90s for being too rock. And a lot of his songs had a hard time being played on the radio because it was so rock. But that's what made him great, is because it was different and it was something you never heard before. And I came across this song recently, Hard Times and Misery, which is just it wasn't a single back then. It's hard to believe. It's such a banger. It's such a fucking great song. And you know what's a great song? It's two legends in one song. This song was written by Marty Stewart back in 1994 for Travis Tritt's album 10 Feet Tall and Bulletproof. Check it out. It is such a great song. I can't believe it wasn't a single back then. It is so fucking good.
My mama told me since the day I was born, son, down in the Southland is where you belong. So I'm pitching nickels, pitching dimes, talking trash and drinking wine. It's just another day in the life of me. Hard times and misery. Shotgun shack. I draw my money from a carton sack, but I finally found one thing that's free. That's them hard times and misery.
So I recently started watching the George and Tammy show, and I think I watched a couple episodes. I want to check it out more when I have time to watch. I'm still so behind on Yellowstone and 1923 or whatever it is. I just don't have a lot of time to watch shows, but I like watching shows. It's just I don't have that much time. But I watched the first, I think maybe it's either the first or the second episode of George and Tammy. It kind of caught me off guard because I thought that this next song, was a 90s. I think of it as a 90s song, a 90s song by Sawyer Brown. But what I didn't know was George Jones wrote this song, or actually it wasn't written by George Jones, but he originally did it. Don Rowlands wrote this song back in 1964. Of course, I'm talking about the song Race Is On. The Race Is On. It was then done by a guy named Jack Jones in 1965, and his version is pretty good. And it's been covered several times, and it's been covered actually 4 or 5 times probably. I know Charlie Crockett did a version of it a few years back. It's pretty good as well. But I'm going to play the OG version. Hopefully it doesn't get blocked. I keep on saying that. This is just an experiment, guys. I don't know how far this is going to go. I'm currently like almost an hour into this podcast, and I have so much more music that I want to push. But it may end up on like the second episode of this podcast if it makes it up. I don't know. But here is George Jones. The Race Is On, and you may have never heard this version. You may think it's a Sawyer Brown song, but you learn something new every day. Here it is. Check it out.
I feel tears welling up, cold and deep inside, like my heart sprung a big break. And the stab of loneliness sharp and painful that I may never shake. Now you might say that I was taking it hard since you wrote me off with a call. But don't you wager that I'll hide the sorrow when I'm right down and bald. Now the race is on and here comes pride up the backstretch. Heartaches are going to the inside. My tears are holding back. They're trying not to fall. My heart's out of the running. True love scratched for another's sake. The race is on and it looks like heartaches, and the winner loses all.
I still think that they should have got Jim Carrey to play George Jones. I'm still kind of... That's something that crosses my mind every time I watch that show. I watched a couple episodes, like I said, but when I first heard about that show, I was like, did they get Jim Carrey? Because have you seen... Like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, have you seen the movie that they did, like Me, Myself, and Irene? Go watch that movie and tell me that that's not George Jones. Like, the early 60s, like 60s George Jones. I feel like that would have been a better pick other than the Michael Shannon or whatever they got. I think Michael Shannon, it's all right. I'm very surprised that they actually did a soundtrack, because I think in the maybe I'm wrong, but I think in the Walk the Line movie they did a soundtrack, but it wasn't actually the actors. I may be totally off on that. I think it was I think it was the actors, but some of these soundtracks that they do, it's not the actors. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm very surprised that they did a soundtrack to it, but I still think they do. I still think they need to do Jim Carrey. I feel like Jim Carrey's the perfect pick, but that's not my decision. So, speaking of living in LA, speaking of Hollyweird, perfect segue here. I recently came across this song by Waylon Jennings, and this was released in the late 80s. And it's not really I don't think it's... Like, when you think of Waylon Jennings, you need to think of this song. And this is kind of the whole goal with this podcast, of, like, you're going to, like, discover some deep cuts. Maybe some of these songs that I've played already are your favorite songs, but I feel like the goal should be of this podcast is to help you discover. The goal of this channel is to help you discover songs you didn't know. And the goal of this Throwback Thursday is to share songs that you didn't know from legendary artists of the past. So, I never thought I would hear Waylon Jennings say Hollyweird. I think of that as like a newer phrase, like a newer thing that people say, Hollyweird. But this song came out in 1988. And it's such a damn good song. And if Hollywood was weird back in the 80s, I mean, this song fits so perfectly. All the people moving here from California. Like, I saw somebody from my on Facebook of like the buy, sell, and trade group. People like this one lady was like, I just moved here from California. I was like, like, there's California tags everywhere. In the past year, I've seen California tags a lot. I don't care if you move here, but just please vote accordingly. Look at what's going on here and figure out how we're voting. Just saying. Just saying.
How much is it worth to live in LA? That land of silk and money where the pretty people play. When they itemize insanity, how much will you pay? How much is it worth to live in L.A.? I'm not here to criticize or to put nobody down, but they're weirding out in Hollywood every time you turn around. And when it comes to crazy, I know where I be, and I know where I'd be leaving if I were walking in their feet.
Speaking of Waylon Jennings, this next song made Waylon Jennings call Johnny Cash a buffoon, where he said it made him look like a buffoon in the music video. And there's a little backstory to this. So I first heard this song was kind of like a big FU to Johnny Cash's label at the time, which was Columbia. And it was actually Columbia that presented this song to him. And I always thought the story went that Johnny Cash had like some time in his contract. He was trying to get out of his contract, so he came up with this stupid ass dumb song. But that's not true. They presented the song to him after songs like A Boy Named Sue and One Piece at a Time, and everybody knows those songs. But have you heard the song The Chicken in Black? Go watch the video. I'm going to play the audio. After Waylon called him a buffoon, Cash made them take down the music video from broadcast and recall the single from stores, interrupting its chart success, and termed the venture a fiasco. So it was a whole, but I mean, I remember listening, like the first time I heard this song was like in the early 2000s on like Sirius radio whenever it was on TV. It was on like satellite, DirecTV or whatever. And I first heard that it was like Outlaw Radio or whatever it was. And they played this song. And for the longest time, I couldn't find it. And then about a year ago, I happened to find it on Spotify. It's not on any of his albums anywhere. It's on like a 2014 best of thing. And if you haven't heard it, here it is. It's one of my favorite Johnny Cash songs. It's really funny. Go watch the video. But he doesn't look like a buffoon. It's just funny. It's classic Cash.
He said, we had this bank robber killed last night. His body shot, but his brain's all right. I'll give you a transplant, boy, and you'll be okay. I got my new brain in and I was feeling great. I went right back to Nashville with no headache, but something strange happened when I walked in the bank one day. I said, stick 'em up, everybody, I'm robbing this place. Drop all of your money in my guitar case. Don't nobody move and don't nobody reach for that door. A lady said, why, you're Johnny Cash. I said, no, ma'am, I'm the Manhattan Flash, and I am the best bank robber in New York.
That song was written by Gene Gentry, who also wrote The Ride for David Allan Coe. Did not know that until this morning, so little fun fact for you. Earlier I played The Race Is On, which was made popular, or not made popular, but you kind of had a resurgence in the 90s with Sawyer Brown. Another song that kind of was given life again in the 90s was the George Jones song Tall, Tall Trees, which was co-written by Roger Miller. Roger Miller and George Jones wrote Tall, Tall Trees, and Alan Jackson cut that song back in 1995 and put it out as a single. It didn't go on an album anywhere, but it's on like a best of album. You can find it. But they're all great versions. But George Jones put it out in 1967, I believe. 1965, it went on his Long Live King George album. But I'm going to play the 1970 version that Roger Miller put out on his album, A Trip in the Country. And Roger Miller has slowly become one of my favorite classic artists that no one ever talks about. Roger is fantastic. He's from Oklahoma, and he's a very diverse artist. He's funny, he's obviously, but if you just listen to some of his deep cuts, and this is one of his deep cuts that no one's probably, when you think of Roger Miller, you think of Dang Me or King of the Road, and that's as far as people get when they think about Roger Miller. But back in, like another song that I found interesting is he did a disco song back in 1979. He was trying to stay relevant. His kind of career was kind of dying down. He put out a disco song. I just thought that was interesting. You can go check it out. But I'm going to play Tall, Tall Trees, which, like I said, was written by Roger Miller and George Jones.
Well, if you want to drive a big limousine, I'll buy the longest one you've ever seen. I'll buy you tall, tall trees and all the waters in the seas. I'm a fool, fool, fool for you. Well, if you want to own a great big mansion, well, I'll give it my utmost attention. I'll buy you tall, tall trees and all the waters in the seas. I'm a fool, fool, fool for you.
Such a legendary artist. And his son, I saw a clip recently on the, Larry's Country Kitchen, or Larry's Diner, or whatever it is on YouTube. I think his name is Dean Miller, and he's a pretty talented musician himself. So check that out if you haven't checked it out. Also, another birthday in January. The other day, January 9th, I believe, or January 8th. I think it's 9th. Jimmy Page had a birthday of Led Zeppelin. Now, I played that song, My Bucket's Got a Hole in It, that they did for that Rockabilly Sun Records album. But I didn't realize, I started thinking about, has Led Zeppelin did any country songs? And in fact, they did. Now, I always thought that the song, Tangerine or Ramble On, songs like that, was kind of country flavored. But out of all the songs that they did this tribute to Elvis, who died in 1977. They put a song called Hot Dog on their album, and the album In Through the Outdoor. And it could be easily covered by one of these Texas guys. It's basically a tribute to Texas. Jimmy Page had Robert Plant had a girlfriend who was from Texas, and she toured with the band in 1977. And then also Elvis died in 1977. So this is kind of their tribute to Elvis and the whole rockabilly phase of the 50s, and it is so good. It could be country song, like one of these. I don't know. Like, I feel like out of all of them, I feel like maybe somebody like John Party could cover this song. Maybe I'd be totally off, but I feel like one of these country rockers, maybe like a Co Wetzel, or maybe some like one of these bands from Texas or Oklahoma could cover this song. But I hope this makes it up. I hope this podcast makes it up. And out of all the songs that could be blocked, it could be this one. But if I cut this part of the episode out because I want to put the rest of the show up, everybody needs to listen to Led Zeppelin, Hot Dog. It's a country banger. Led Zeppelin is great, but like I was saying earlier, I feel like a lot of these bands from the 60s and 70s, they had their country moment. Like there's a band called Thin Lizzy, who I think they're from Australia or maybe England, and their big hit was like The Boys Are Back in Town, but they have a song called Country or Cowboy Song, and it could easily be a country song today.
Well, I just got in down today to find my girl that's gone away. She took the Greyhound and the general store. I searched myself, I searched the town. When I finally did set down, I find myself no wiser than before. She said we couldn't do no wrong, no other love could be so strong. She locked up my heart in the bottom drawer. Now she took my heart, she took my keys from in my old blue dungarees, and I'll never go to Texas anymore. Now my baby's gone, I don't know what.
Drake Milligan. That's the guy I was thinking of. Drake Milligan. He's the guy. He's the new country Elvis that won. I think he won America's Got Talent, or maybe second place. Maybe I'm not really sure. He was definitely on America's Got Talent. I don't watch the show, but Drake Milligan was on that Sun Records show like a long time ago, and then all of a sudden he came out of nowhere with being on America's Got Talent. And, I could see him doing this song. Like, it's such a good song but anyway. Well, we're down to our last 2 songs here. And hopefully you're enjoying this. Maybe, hopefully this podcast makes it up. There's a lot of, the bad thing about doing copyrighted content or putting up copyrighted content is it gets blocked sometimes. So, but earlier I played What Goes On by the Beatles. And I found this a couple years ago. I found this 6-part series, or this 6-part album collaboration deal called the Minnesota Beatle Project. And I freaking love this deal. It's like 6 albums of covers of Beatles songs. And it's all of these bands from Minnesota. And you have Trampled by Turtles is on there. You have, it's not all country. There's some, other types of genres on there, which is fine. It's great. But what I want to play for you today is the Pistol Whippin' Party Penguins. Never heard of them, but they did a cool cover of this Beatles song that is very country. And, after looking into this, for this podcast, a lot of, like, John Denver covered a Beatles song way back in the 70s, like early 70s. Mother Nature's Son, I believe. So there's Beatles sprinkled everywhere, all throughout music history. There's Beatles and everything, and they did a lot of country. There's like a Reddit thread. If you type in Beatles country songs, there's a Reddit thread of all types of songs that they did. And let's just pull that up right quick and see if I can find that. Matchbox, which is a cover of Carl Perkins. It's okay. So it's a cover of Carl Perkins' rockabilly song. I'll Cry Instead, which is a rockabilly tune. Honey Don't, another Carl Perkins song. Everybody Trying to Be My Baby, which is another Carl Perkins song that they did. Babies in Black, which is a country Walt Strong, Everly Brothers influence, which I was right about that, I think. They were really influenced by the Sun Records era and Carl Perkins and that time frame of music. I Don't Want to Spoil Your Party, which is another Everly Brothers country rock type stuff. I Just Seen Your Face, which I'm going to play here in a second. It's very bluegrass sounding. Like the instruments that they use, like the production, it doesn't sound country, but when you put it to country music, like actual country music, it's very country. And of course, the Act Naturally song that was a Buck Owens song that they did. Rocky Raccoon is a very country song. It could be done by Johnny Cash. It probably was covered by Johnny Cash at some point in time. I can't find it. And Octopus's Garden, which is a slightly psychedelic country pop tune. So if you're on, actually this is not Reddit, this is a Quora thread. I don't know, you can probably find some more songs like that, but here is the Pistol Whippin' Party Penguins, I Just Seen a Face.
I've just seen a face, I can't forget the time or place where we just met. She's a girl for me, and I want all the world to see we met. La, da, 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 da.
So freaking good. If you want more songs like that are Beatles country songs, you can go check out the Minnesota Beatle Project or the Charles River Valley Boys. So interesting. And maybe you're not into that as much as I am, but hey, it's my show, so I can play what I want. So we're down to our last song here. And speaking of legendary covers, this next song is probably was more famous as a cover than the original version. And of course I'm talking about Dean Dillon's classic Tennessee Whiskey. Now everybody thinks that Chris Stapleton wrote that song, but they're wrong. They are wrong. It actually was written for a guy you may have heard of, David Allan Coe. Now, this song was originally pitched to George Strait, but it ended up on Mr. Coe's album. So we're going to end the show with Tennessee Whiskey, David Allan Coe, and George Jones also did a version as well. But if you haven't seen the Tennessee Whiskey documentary, I don't know where it's. I don't think it's on Netflix. It's on. You can probably find it on YouTube now, but it was on. I don't know where I found it. It was on Amazon or somewhere. But just type in Dean Dillon Tennessee Whiskey documentary. It's very interesting. It's really cool how he got started, and how that song kind of saved him whenever Chris Stapleton put it out, because he was. He made a lot of money from Chris Stapleton's version. Let's just say that. So, but yeah, we're into the show here. Thank you so much for listening this far. We're an hour and a half into the show, and I appreciate everybody's out there's time, and hopefully this makes it up. And if you're hearing this, I appreciate everybody out there for checking it out. Thank you for almost 5,000 subscribers, and let me know if you want to hear more podcasts. If you want to hear more of this podcast or the other podcast where I talk about new music, or want to hear both, let me know in the comments, and have a great Thursday.
I used to spend my nights out in a bar room. Liquor was the only love I'd known, but you rescued me from reaching for the bottom and brought me back from being too far gone. You're as smooth